Michael Zuber from One Rental at a Time often says that the difference between a recession and a depression is a recession is when your neighbor gets laid off, and a depression is when you get laid off. Getting laid off is something that we're trying to make not matter as an investor. So what should an investor do during a recession? You should make part of the video a short that you could take out of the live later and use as a regular video to save time in your retirement. Planning for a recession is a lot better than finding yourself in a recession and trying to figure out what to do. If you are working in a job like a 9-to-5 and it is your single source of income, that is the person I think that is the biggest risk during a recession. A lot of times when I talk finances with people, real estate comes up because I'm me. And it's actually the way that I reached absolute financial freedom and never have to work again in my life. Whether there is a recession or a depression, doesn't matter to me. People say, isn't that risky? Isn't it risky to own assets, especially if you have debt on those assets? And I think it's a lot more risky if you have one source of income, a W-2, where you have to sell your life 1 hour at a time, because what do you do when nobody's buying? But is it risky to own assets? If you own stocks on margin and the margin gets called and you don't have the resources to cover the call, that's risky. If you own real estate and you are over levered and you have too thin a margin and you don't diversify your property types, you don't diversify your tenant types, it can be very risky. If you use the wrong debt structure, something like an adjustable rate mortgage when interest rates double in the last 3 months can absolutely be very risky. So I get as the person that I'm usually talking to isn't an investor, isn't investing in the asset class that I do, isn't educated on how investing works, it is very risky. One of the biggest risks you can take is investing in something you're not educated on, kind of like, and feel free to hate me for this, the two things that I dislike the most when it comes to investing is 1, retirement accounts, and 2, insurance. If you're an insurance rep, you're going to hate what I say, because insurance is an industry that makes money from clients who don't understand the industry. It's the whole point. As soon as they're educated, you stop making money from them. Retirement accounts has a whole other list of reasons why I don't like it. Mostly because the two types of people benefit, 3, because the government benefits from everything we do. Types of people who benefit from retirement accounts aren't you. So if we're coming into a recession, why was I able to retire in the middle of 2022 when, with fair certainty, I thought we were already in a recession because we had already had 2 negative quarters of, 2 quarters of negative GDP growth. And then people were like, oh, let's throw out this new thing so that our politicians don't look bad. And we're going to say, also, you need a really high unemployment rate. And then I retired. So either we were in a recession and they changed the name, or we're going to be in a recession. I have confidence that that's happening. Why did I walk away from my job? And that's because here's what an investor should do for a recession. Develop an investing strategy that plans on, expects, kind of counts on a recession happening. Right? We've all heard the Warren Buffetts and the Charlie Mungers and the Kevin O'Learys and those kind of people say, millionaires are made during a recession. Well, why? How? They had a strategy waiting for it and expecting it. So if you've become a millionaire, how do you protect yourself in a recession? So I am not a stock investor. And I guarantee that, if you want to know the right things to do with stocks when it comes to retiring early, I recommend Joe Kuhn here on YouTube. I don't know the guy. I watch his stuff. I don't invest in stocks, but I like his retirement stuff. He uses a bucket method. So he's planning on bear markets. He used the 4% rule and some other strategies that I just don't invest in stocks, so it's not my thing. If you invest in stocks, educate yourself on how people plan for bear markets and recessions. If you invest in real estate, here's a couple simple strategies that I use that make me sleep like a baby, and not the one that wakes up screaming every couple of hours. I mean, actually sleeps all the way through the night or day, depending on when you realize you like to sleep. Just something cool that you find out about yourself when you retire early. First, keep good reserves, right? A lot of people look at real estate because you can invest with none of your own money. You can borrow the down payment. You can use hard money and can use flipping to get into real estate. You can do all of these risky strategies. I didn't do that. I saved the reserve. Diversify your property types and locations. I don't want to own 10 units under one roof. I was at a presentation last weekend at the Christian and Cody Multifamily Strategies at the Robin Hood Resort, and there was a presenter talking about he wants the most doors under one roof because he doesn't want a bunch of units with a bunch of different roofs. Well, I wouldn't want them all in one area. The drawback to me of having a 10 unit or a 20 unit or a 30 unit apartment complex, other than usually debt structure, is your tenants are all coming from the same area because it's all in the same place. So my small multifamily properties, my goal is that they're all at least 10 miles apart. And most of mine are. I have 2 that are 7 miles apart, but the rest are all at least 10 miles apart, all within an hour's drive of where I live. So they draw tenants from different economic drivers. That's the second thing. So first, I want my properties a bit spread out, not Kentucky, Michigan, Washington spread out, but 2 different counties, more than 10 miles apart, spread out. And then a footprint of property of population that I can manage and know the good and bad neighborhoods in. So I want them more spread out. So if you're in the middle of a really highly densely populated area and you're too spread out, you might not be able to learn the markets to know the ones to avoid. So my area is fairly rural. I am, to be transparent, all of my properties are between or around Tacoma and Olympia and Washington, but none of my properties are in Tacoma or Olympia and Washington. So I diversify my property locations by doing small multifamily instead of apartment complexes. And I want them near several different economic drivers. I don't want to own properties in a place where car manufacturers are the only source of people, or a paper mill is the only source of people, or Silicon Valley seems to be really tech heavy. So the tech industry has too much impact on that local market. So when in 2008 to 2009, the largest market-wide drop we've ever seen in the housing market, as far as a crash goes, was 8.9% drop market-wide, right? But there were places like Sacramento where they saw a 75% drop in property values because there was one type of economic driver. So in my area, I'm looking for things like a base, a port, colleges, hospitals, Boeing or Amazon or large companies. And then in some ways, I want a large population. I do have I invest in a town called McKenna, Washington, where there's 650 people or something, but it's enough. There's enough of the other economic drivers in the area for me to be confident that that property is going to have tenants if there's something like a base closure or port strike or prolonged government shutdown or something like that. So that's my first strategy, is keeping good reserves, diversifying the properties. Then I also diversify my tenant base. So your tenants are your customers. Would you want all of your customers to be the same? Matt, the lumberjack landlord, teaches us this method, this concept, because in 2008, he was killing it, right? He had, I think, 8 or 9 rentals, and construction was booming. So he understood the construction industry. He had almost all of his tenants in the construction field. And he went from 8 to 5 to 3 to 1 tenant paying because that entire industry was impacted by the housing crash. So instead of doing that, learning from people's struggles in hard times, we build our portfolio expecting a recession. I don't want any one industry to be the majority of my tenants. So I'm near one of the largest bases on the West Coast. I rent to military, but I don't want 100% military, even though in some cases they'll pay more than market rent because BAH is so high around, the basic allowance for housing is so high in our area. I want about 1/3 military. And then I want about 1/3 with the housing program, Section 8. Different tenant sources. And then I have about 1/3 that's working or retired. And anytime I bring this up, somebody jumps in the comments and actually says, well, it's kind of illegal to advertise that you only want military, or you only take Section 8, or you won't take military or Section 8. Well, I am fairly stupid when it comes to certain things like parenting and relationships, most of life. I'm not stupid when it comes to things that you can get sued for. So I don't advertise military only or military not accepted on any kind of advertisement, but I can control where I advertise. If I have a unit that opens up, and to keep my balance, my ratio fairly close to that 1/3 of each, and I want a military tenant and I advertise on base, who do you think I'm going to get? If I have a unit opening and I would like another housing voucher tenant, and I call the housing authority and I talk to the counselor and I say, here's an emailed link to my unit that's opening up next Tuesday. Can you let your clients know? Who do you think is going to be the first application? I can control my advertising without advertising illegally. So diversified locations, diversified tenant base, keeping good reserves. I like to invest in Class C properties. Right? I don't want Class A. I don't want D, the war zone type, where you can't safely go to collect rents or send a handyman and feel like they're not going to get murdered. But I want Class C properties, working class, not expensive, not super fancy, clean or safe, clean, and functional. It's really what I want my rentals to be. And then I take good care of them. So with Class C properties, my rents attract tenants who have an area average or even a little below area average income. If you're in an area and you have a rental that can get like $5,000 a month, so you rent it out to somebody who works in tech and they make $150,000 or $300,000 a year, $5,000 a month, it's fair rent for them, no problem. And they lose their job. And the tech industry is really being hit hard. So that person's probably not going to be able to lateral transfer to another company and even keep the same income. They're probably going to take a big pay cut, which means finding a way to save money on their biggest expense, which is probably that $5,000 a month in rent, is going to be how they save money. With my tenants, in the last decade, I've had several tenants lose jobs, change careers, retire, just all of these changes in their life. But in a decade, I've never had a later missing rent payment. Because if somebody's making $20 an hour and they lose their job, it's not that hard to go out and find another $20 an hour job. I've had 2 or 3 friends in the last couple of months change jobs because they went online, they found a $24 to $29 an hour work from home job, and they're working from home. That doesn't matter where you live. So if you say, well, in my area, nobody's paying that much. Most fast food places are paying $18 an hour. So your average job is going to be $20 an hour or more. Very not easy. It's more likely for a tenant that's paying $1,500 a month in rent to continue to pay their rent, even on unemployment for 6 months, than somebody making $150,000 a year paying $5,000 a month in rent has a major career change. Keep reserves, diversify property locations, diversify tenant base, and then choose the asset class that's going to make the most sense in bad times. Yes, in good times, that Class A property person might actually have a better return than me. They're probably going to have more turnover. They're going to have less demand in hard times. Luxury is the first thing to go when we have economic hardships. So I sleep like a baby. You don't have to invest in real estate. You might be growing a business. You might invest in stocks. What you do is in the good times, like we've had for the last 10 years, we've had the bull market in stocks and real estate and prices going up. If you ran a flipping business, what you can do in 2023 is very different than what you could do in 2020 or 2021, right? Prices were going up so much, you can make mistakes, have delays in projects, and the market covered you. So planning like that was going to continue would not be the best strategy, in my opinion, for a recession. The best thing to do for a recession is, before we have one, invest like you plan on there being one. So that's a video I'm going to try to steal from this longer live stream and put out as a standalone, which I'm going to try to remember to do more often here, because I have a couple of really videos where I've gone into detail on what, like the first 10 years, I did that one. I've got another one of is now a good time for a home equity line of credit, where there are people who will never click on a 3-hour video, but those first 10 minutes might really help them. So I have a guest that's going to be popping in here in a minute, and we're going to be talking about our plans during a recession. Amafid, howdy. I appreciate the super chat. I'm going to look and see if there is a question in case I missed one here. And I will try to get to all of the questions tonight. There's my guest. We're about to find out if they have closed. Tom Kine, howdy, Mike. How are you?
What's going on?
Another beautiful day.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, good.
I can hear you. Seems like it's one way though.
No, I can hear you.
Okay. Tom, thank you for the super chats. I appreciate it. That will probably, there's cake there. The next time we have the Tacoma FI meetup, I will probably be eating dessert. So thank you for that. You're buying my dessert. And thanks for being a member. I appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed the members only live stream from last Friday, where we looked at about 18 different deals. I was at 8 that sucked. Like, I went through my emails from my agent and I thought, this is a horrible deal. Let's talk about why this is a horrible deal. And I went through several, and some of those members only live streams will go to, your market. We've done Dividend Daves. We've done a couple of others. We want to look at, leads from your agents. But as I was closing it up, I scrolled to the top and I was about to close it. And I was like, well, there's a duplex at a price that kind of makes sense. It took like half a second for me to think, hang on, before we end this, let's go into this. Looked at the deal, showed the deal to Mike while we were at the Robin Hood Resort. Like teenagers looking at our phones.
I said, I'm going to buy it unless you do.
You did. So I made my offer. And just so everyone's aware, it was a duplex for $400,000. Barely makes sense. It doesn't have garages like I like it. It is side by side. It's in a market that's not quite a war zone, but it's not the best area either. It hits most of my metrics. So I made a cash offer a little bit below asking, and it had been on the market a bit. 50,000 above ask, maybe 40,000. I have to look again. It was 40 or 50,000 above asking, all cash, waived all contingencies offers, multiple offers over asking. So we're definitely in a housing crash. Make sure you don't buy because prices are crashing.
I think it's very interesting that it's like, oh, you're expecting a crash. You already missed it. At the end of the day, there's going to be this little tiny blip that went down. And there it was right there. If you missed it, too bad.
Right. Exactly. I think Zuber nailed it last week with the end of the housing crash. Hopefully you were here for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Lumberjack Landlord makes a very valid point that the prettiest half of the REI Avenger showed up when you joined my channel. So
yeah, well, he's welcome to come bring some good old fashioned knowledge. We know he's not bringing looks, but he's bringing knowledge.
Matt's always welcome on my channel. He can anytime message me. You can jump in here, but I try not to bring him too much because he does his lives on Sundays. We're alternating lives on Fridays. And the thing that sucks the most about Matt, I'm trying to fix this though. He still has a job. It gets in the way of us hanging out.
Not for long.
Not for long, right?
Not for long.
Exactly. So tell me, Mike, as I look through here, and I'm going to get to all the howdies and questions, and hopefully some more questions pop up that we can go through. Like there was one here from, and I think I glossed over it because Tom asked a question. How do you determine I'm guessing credit score for screening tenants? So how did you determine which credit score you would go with? Because we actually have a different one for very valid reasons.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yep. So that's a great question.
It does differ in what area you're at. So when I moved my investing strategy to Gary, Indiana, and I had been renting out the other side of my duplex here, I had a minimum credit score of 620 here, which according to Dion is still really low. But to me, I thought that was decent, 620. When I went out there to Gary and I talked to my property manager and I said, hey, I want to have the same standards that I have for tenants here, 620 credit score, 3 times the income, all this type of stuff. And she just said straight up, she was like, look, if somebody has a 620 credit score, when houses are $50,000 a house, they'll just buy it. If you're making 3 times rent and rent's $1,000 and you're making $3,000 a month with a 620 credit score, you can afford to buy a $50,000 house. So she's like, you'll never find a tenant that looks like that. She said, what I look for is no evictions ever. And they're probably going to have bad credit, but I look at what the credit is bad for. She's like, a lot of people have missed payments, but it's like a dumb payment on like a utility for like a phone or something because they were just young and dumb and stupid. She's like, so what I do is I make sure that I do a really good reference check and I talk with their previous landlords and she vets tenants that way. And I've had good success relying on her experience. But yeah, it was shocking when she was like, yeah, I don't really look at credit scores. I look at eviction and prior payment history through the previous landlords. And I was like, well, you're the expert. I'll trust you. Let's try it. And it's worked out pretty well so far.
Right. So when it comes to choosing the credit score that you use, Tom, like Mike, you have to look at your location, what makes sense in that market. For me, the score isn't what mattered. I like, Mike, how you said no evictions. Credit history matters, right? The reason I chose a score is because somebody who's worked hard to get their credit score up for whatever is considered high in your market is going to protect it. What actually determined where I set my credit score was demand. If I set the credit score at 600, I had 200 or 300 applications in a couple of days. When I set the credit score to 700, which is where I've kept it ever since, I get 30 to 50 applications within a couple of days, and I could manage that. So it was high enough to make sure that this is a credit score somebody wants to protect. And then how much demand was there? And the thing that confuses a lot of people when I talk about credit scores, Tom, is there is no difference with me for credit score if it's a Section 8, military, working or retired. The type of property you have attracts the type of tenant. I have Section 8 tenants with 830 credit scores. I have a lot of Section 8 tenants who applied that don't even have a 700 credit score. So there's good and bad credit scores across the board on all types of tenants. But that's how we chose credit scores that we would go with. Planning for a recession, Mike. And then I do want to clarify one thing really quick, because I do get comments. I haven't seen the comments in the comments section. I get these in emails. When we do a live stream together, we are not 10-year-olds with technology like teleprompter, if that's still a thing, or a screen in front of us with stuff going up that you can get to. We're using Zoom. And somehow we've Mickey Moused it to connect with YouTube. So we can kind of see the chat on my computer. But if you're not the one hosting the live, you can't see the YouTube chat on your screen. So what do? You have the video playing on your phone. And then you're scrolling through to find the questions that you want to reply to, or sometimes the sarcastic questions to react to. So no, the person not hosting the live isn't texting their friends while they're in the middle of a Zoom or a call with you. They're looking at your comments, trying to reply. So hopefully we've clarified that for Dan.
I get some hate for being a millennial and being on my phone. Like, bro, I'm engaging in the chat down here, trying to help people.
So I even tried to do the phone on the screen, but then you're always reaching at the camera to do things, and it's just it's harder. It's easier to do it. I'll just keep clarifying in each video. And then I see that Sheena became a member. Thank you. Welcome to the club. We have cookies.
Nice.
On all the computers. Angel R. Howdy. Don't tip your tenant. Don't tip your tenant. I like that. I've been really careful with when I see the question of, do you give your tenant a present at Christmas? You have 3 or 4 tenants, sure, it might make sense. You have 16, it starts to become a logistical issue. And then if you forget one and tenants talk, no. I think the best tip I give for my tenants is trying to leave them alone. I think the least amount of interaction possible. A comment just popped up down there, Glover. It is entirely possible you missed the housing crash. And there's 2 words missing from this sentence that I'm about to use, right? You missed the housing crash. In transactions. We may not see a housing crash in prices. We may see a correction. I think Matt's projecting a 5 or 10% decrease, and Matt's way smarter than me. So I've already lost money to him on a couple of things. So I'm not going to make a bet. I'm smart enough to not do that. Zuber calls for flat. I call for inflation is probably going to make prices go up because it takes more money to buy the same asset. So I'm very simplistic, and Matt and Mike both have, decades, Zuber and Lumberjack, of more experience. So I would trust their information on that more than mine. What is your projection, Mike?
If we're going to have a crash?
On home prices at the end of 2023.
So I'm an expert in the Gary, Indiana real estate market. We will not have a crash in Gary, Indiana real estate. It's not going to happen. Prices peaked end of 2021. They actually kind of came down back to their early 2021 values, probably at the beginning of 2022, and they've just held constant. They took, just like a lot of things, they skyrocketed up, and then they came down, backed off 5 to 10%, and they've just been holding there. But when you deal with houses that are priced in the $50,000 to $70,000 range, there's not a lot of room for stuff to come down like that. It's just I don't see it happening. And even if we did have a crash, that would get us back to 2019 levels. And the main point that I've been making over and over again, and I put myself through the pain and misery of watching Real Estate Mindset's hour-and-a-half long live about how he's buying a house, the hypocrite. Hopefully you don't mind if I talk about him, Dion. Sorry.
No, I don't mind. I hate driving people to his channel because somebody might go, I don't know, give me a listen to what they're talking about. And he's just based on no real data. He uses month on month, which ignores what happens year on year. And if you're trying to figure out, I want to be whatever he is, an agent or a broker, and sure, he's got experience with that. If you want to be a predatory lender in the 2008 thing, sure, go learn from him. But do you want to learn from somebody who's renting? Do you want to learn from somebody who's buying a house right now, saying for a year that the crash is coming, the crash is coming. Oh, let me take all this YouTube money and buy a house. You use the term hypocrite. It's 7 factors nicer than the word that comes to mind.
Yeah, well, I don't want to get you canceled on YouTube, my guy. So, but ultimately, I listened to his hour-and-a-half or hour and 15-minute long live, and he's talking about, price, guys. Price is what's really the most important, and I'm getting it at this lowered price, at the 2019 price. And I'm like, bro, I've done the math. I've shown the math repeatedly, and the math shows that if you bought a $500,000 house with a 3% interest rate, you make $2,100 a month payment. If you buy a $350,000 house at a 6% interest rate, it's the same $2,100 a month payment. So your prices had to fall by 30% just to get the exact same payment that you would have gotten previously. And he swears up and down that price is the most important thing, which it's not. Price is a factor when you purchase a house. But another factor is the interest rate, because most people buy their houses on monthly payments. And if you can't afford the monthly payment, or if the monthly payment's too large of a percentage of your income, you're going to get debt to income ratioed out by your lender. You don't even qualify for it in the first place. So he gave people a lot of advice to stand by on the sidelines and do nothing and wait for prices to crash. And as we just joked about earlier, did you see the crash? Did you miss it already? Great. Prices dipped by 5, maybe 10% in some markets. Interest rates doubled, so your crash gave you a 40% higher payment. Enjoy. And it's already over, but the interest rates are still here. So now as prices recover, enjoy.
2 things that happen that kind of you can see as an investor, but you don't have a pretty chart going and you don't whiteboard it, so people don't pay attention. The first is, Zuber talked about this, 30 million people in a poll want to purchase a home in 2023. 70% of the people who wanted to purchase a home in 2022 failed to do so. Right? So there's this massive demand. Now you have things coming out like, to avoid politics, but they're talking about nationwide rent control. Just the mentioning of it pulls back building, pulls back investors, creates less units. Rentals get sold to owners. Yay, home prices, more sales. So that might help. But rental units become short-term. So long-term goes to short-term, goes to mid-term. You have less rentals. It's going to drive up rent prices. Like, I don't see the metric that says a crash or a correction is coming, but that video is going to get a lot more views because people are looking for confirmation that not taking action was the right thing to do. Howdy, Devin and Dave. Good to see you. Did you vanish? Howdy, 30 more minutes. Hopefully that's not a life sentence. Michelle, howdy. Let's bring the heat up. Exactly. It's almost like Siberia here this last week here too. Michelle, I'm sorry, Friday, the members only was supposed to be at 4. I was attacked by a llama and was a little bit late, but it still happened. It's still up. Lauren, howdy from Tacoma. Good. Hopefully you have a very boring work shift. Robert from Sacramento, howdy. Peter, Matthew, all-nighter, howdy. Good to see you guys here. Here, hoping I can keep up. I'm in an internet dead zone again. I had power drop at my place like twice earlier today. So if I all of a sudden drop, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk. RT, tip your tenants. Yeah, I was not sure on that one too. Don't tip your tenants. I don't know. I try to talk all my tenants into buying a house. Almost every tenant I've talked to or interacted with, I've actually gone through and said, paying rent to me sucks. Let me introduce you to an agent. Let me show you, here's the lenders that I would work with. Here's how you buy a duplex. One bought a house, not a house hack. One inherited a house. But I have yet to have a tenant go, Hey, let me talk to your agent and buy a place. Oliver, howdy. Thought I wasn't going to make it, but not today. Laura, howdy. Matthew, the members, are they at 4 Eastern or 4 Pacific? So they're supposed to be 4 Pacific. Last week was an anomaly. So 4 Pacific. So I'm trying to stay with that same time. I might do some members only live streams on Saturdays right now because nobody's doing in our circle. Nobody's doing live streams on Saturdays. We'll see how they go. And if anybody hasn't heard, if there's anybody here for the first time, here's why I do members only live streams. I want to share content in a format like this where I answer questions. The questions that come up sometimes spark the conversation that's really going to help a new investor. And as you can see right now, there's 70 to 80 people on the live stream. People will watch this content because it's your questions, real time, getting answered, top of mind awareness, what an investor keeps in their mind. So if I don't have an answer or we have to look up the answer, we know that isn't something that an investor had to keep like in their mind currently to make quick decisions. But in the members only live streams, I want to do some really boring things. Boring to me is sexy. I want to actually look at deals. I want to go, here's a 5-minute conversation on a deal that it would have taken me 5 to 15 seconds to dismiss. But why? What was the actual thought process that made me look at it and go, yep, that's not one I would buy? Or like last week, make an offer on one. If I did that on a public video, it would kill my channel. Because what kills your channel is people clicking in because the title's good and they go, oh, let me see what's going on here. And then the content scares them away. And me looking at an email would click people out. But members, and you know that's what you're coming for, and it's only shown to you, that seems to be doing really well. I see Matt. Howdy. Tenant was late for work because of plumber servicing water heater was late. I feel grateful for sacrifice and thinking to Zelle $100 to $200 dinner. Thank you, yes or no. She's been no problem tenant. I've done very similar. When a tenant is inconvenienced, it's not a tip to give them money. I think I wouldn't give cash. I definitely wouldn't give a rent reduction because then they might think of creative ways to be inconvenienced. But something like $100 to $200 for a dinner thing is I would totally consider doing that. I'm trying to think of. I don't know if I should share this. One property had a septic issue that lasted like a day and a half. So I got a really nice hotel for the family. And it wasn't like, hey, I'm going to get you, the Holiday Inn Express in our area. I mean, it was like 4-star, twice as much as it needed to be for the inconvenience to the tenant. So absolutely. I think that's kind of a great idea. Well, what would you do in that situation, Mike?
I'm sorry, ask me the question one more time. I was responding to Beth down in the comments who wants to jump in with us in the future. She said she missed us. One more time, what was the question?
So thank you for that. Did you send Beth an invite?
Well, I don't have the ability to, or do I have an invite? I said she should join us next time. If she's in the chat, she wants to join now, we can get her in.
I will send her an invite. So the next time Mike, just forward your email.
Sure. Oh, duh, that would have been smart. I just didn't think I was host.
That's okay. I know we need a 10-year-old to run the tech for us, right? I would love to have Beth in here. She's always welcome, like Matt. She's probably thinking, I didn't mean tonight.
But she's like, oh shoot, I'm not ready.
Right. I will send it if she jumps in. Great. If not, next time. Beth, you're always invited. Come on here. You have great information that I love to share with people.
Yeah, Beth is the man, but in a very feminine way.
Exactly.
Speaking, she's the man.
Here was the question from Matt Bob. Tenant was inconvenienced, right? That's the crux of it. He wants to give $100 or $200 gift certificate for a restaurant.
Interesting. Yeah, so they were late for work because the plumber servicing the water heater was late. And then Matt's grateful for the tenant. So to not tipping the tenant, not setting an expectation. Yeah, that's really tough, honestly. If it was me and it was the relationship that I had with the tenants next door and they did something like that for me, I actually probably would be in the same boat as them. So these people have lived here for 2 years. They're wonderful tenants. They've paid the entire year's rent up front twice. If they were 2 hours late to work because a plumber didn't show up when they were supposed to and it was stressing them out, I would just apologize profusely. let them know I won't use that plumbing company again. And I would try to do something nice for them as well, like maybe a $50 gift card or something like that. I don't think you should do like a here, pay me $50 less or something. It would just, $50 gas gift card is what I would do.
Yeah, gas gift card's a good one. Restaurant, if you know the tenant and you know the area, maybe. But yeah, gas helps unless they have Teslas, then you would know not to. Where was I? On the Beth thing. I've sent an invite, so she might pop in here. But don't feel obligated, Beth, if you weren't ready. I mean, it is 4:30 in the afternoon on a work day, and you are one of the top agents nationwide. So I can't imagine you just have the free time to just jump in, but you're welcome if you can. And then howdy to everybody here that's making it in the chat. I appreciate it. I see Cody's jumped in here. Howdy, Oliver. I did a video this morning with Cody Evers. We need to get him a shirt that says Cody trying to do Cody things. We talked about his portfolio. I talked about him a little bit last week because Cody won the 1 hour time. And we had a meeting and it was really what made me want to also do a follow-up to do like a portfolio kind of review, which he agreed to, and we did a video, so that'll be coming up Thursday. Was imagine this, Mike, brand new investor, 10 units, less than 2 years, or right around 2 years, house hacking, third house hack, just getting into the third house hack, has a spouse, baby on the way.
Okay.
In the conversation, Cody actually said, I'm kind of disappointed that I didn't add any rental units in 2022.
Yeah, dude, you suck, bro. Wow, what a bum, dude. You're like, honestly, trash. Get your trash game, get out of the chat, unsubscribe, dislike. We don't need that in here. Meanwhile, we got people who are like getting started in their 50s, some people in their 60s. Bro, I have a slightly different opinion when it comes to like comparing yourself to others. I do agree with Dion's point that like don't compare your year 1 to someone else's year 10. But like I love to compare myself to other people. Like the way that I got to play professional soccer was specifically picking out the person who played in my position, acknowledging that I was not as good as them, comparing myself to them in every single facet of the game, and then being better and bigger and stronger and faster than them so I could play. Like if it wasn't for competition, you would never get good enough to have the opportunities that you want. So I mean, I'm a very competitive person. So I understand, like when I sit back and I'm like, oh, I'm so mad. I only got 2 deals done in all of 2022. They were 2 burr projects. I wanted to do way more. I'm frustrated with myself. And I don't want people to make excuses for me and be like, oh, that's okay. It's all great, blah, blah, blah. Because like, I don't want that killer instinct spirit in me that apparently Cody must have as well. Cause he's like, oh, I didn't buy any deals. But yeah, realistically, dude, you're killing it. Well, I'm with you though. Let's be better. I'm mad too, bro.
And then I find out it wasn't that he didn't add any rentals because he sold one and bought one. So he did 2 transactions and he was like, yeah, I didn't add any rentals. So it's really a nuanced thing to be irritated with. Cody's doing great. And that's what I wanted. That's why I wanted to do the video, is because even when you're doing great, you can feel like you're not doing enough. Matthew Paris, howdy. You're so bad at this game. Catching alive. It's every Tuesday, 4 p.m. This is the 62nd one in a row. I did a couple before that, but there was a gap between.
Really? This is 62?
62.
Wasn't it Zuber who talked you into these? Like, I guess it was over a year ago, or Matt?
Oh, who was it? It was probably both. Matt's the one that could talk me into anything. Matt, we have like the playground rivalry of like little kids. Can't wait to hang out, but we're gonna pick on each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was him that was talking about lives, and I think he did 1 or 2, so he probably did them before me.
Okay.
And then I said, okay, I'm going to do 1 live, and I'm going to explain to people why I don't do lives. So my very first live, number 1, is me saying, here's why I don't do lives. And here we are. Ironically, that's how I get most of the dates I've ever had. I tell a girl, look, nothing's ever going to happen between us. Dividend Dave, I'm a moderator for this live stream. What's up with the wrench icon by your name? You don't have to be. I can take it away if you like. I just figure you're here. You know the prawn to delete when it pops up. And then I didn't see it because I was driving and listening to Matt's live stream on Sunday, but I know that there was some commenter who made a couple of comments and then made a couple of assertions and all of a sudden was blocked. So I suppose I should ask before I make someone a moderator. That's weird.
I mean, they can just refuse to do the duties, but yeah, I mean,
there you go. Yeah, you don't have to do
people,
anything. Dave.
Yeah, you pass it to the people who are always here that you know aren't going to spam us with crap.
Right, exactly. Michelle, I'm not ready to retire, but I am not afraid of getting laid off. That's a beautiful way to feel. I like it. In fact, I think it would kick me in the pants to go on overdrive and invest more. Now, that's awesome. So being able to retire early doesn't mean that you retire early. But life is a lot better when you have options.
Yeah.
Dividend Dave, super chat for Beth to jump in now.
Oh, she said she was going to, by the way. She said she'll be on her computer in like the next 15 minutes.
Okay, well, we're definitely going to be here for that. And then just so everyone knows, at the end of the live stream tonight, which I'm not sure how long should go. And Mike, you don't have to stay for the whole thing, of course, because I'm just weird this way. And I also don't have a 6-year-old running around the house that I have to go then take care of, right?
Yeah.
I mean, my 23-year-old's tied up, but at the end of this live stream, we're actually going to do a giveaway of either, you have a choice, an audio book or a one-on-one hour consultation for me, which doesn't have the value, so you don't have a tax impact of to purchase an hour of time with me. My price is $5,000 an hour. And my goal is that nobody's stupid enough to pay that because it's not worth it. But if you would like an audiobook, and you can pick any one you want, I would like it to be something to do with real estate. 15 Conversations with Real Estate Millionaires would be my favorite choice because I narrated that. But it can be, Set for Life, Sold, any of the books, and Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Cash Flow Quadrant, something that will help you on your investing journey. Or it can be a Dragonlance novel. Who knows?
Yeah. So if anybody picks the Audible book, you're a fool. Okay. You're a fool. The book's like $15 online. Dion's time is invaluable.
Well, that way, if it's somebody like Cody or Tiffany or Phil or there are more, and I have memory issues, so I don't do lives, of people who've had the 1 hour call. Maybe you want a second one, but if you'd rather have the audiobook, I totally understand. Will not be offended. Rob, 2 more super chats and Mike to buy another Gary house.
I appreciate that. Yeah, if I get 2 $5 super chats, that's pretty much a down payment. So, dude, I just got flamed at the Robinhood event. Like, I was the butt of the joke by all 3 people I was up there on stage with. I was just soaking up blows left and right. It was a good time.
It was very entertaining, and thanks for being a good sport. So, and not kicking my ass.
Hey, well, first
I was within striking distance, right?
Dion could take me in a fight. He's being humble. He's black belt stud. He take me in a fight. That being said, I'm a gunfighter. I don't know what I'm allowed to say on YouTube, but I can handle business. Anyways, let me talk about Gary for just like 1 second.
Go ahead.
Because this is something we covered at the Robinhood event. A lot of people see the very cheap out-of-state properties and they say to themselves, hey, it's a super cheap deal. I'm going to buy it. It's going to work for me. You might get lucky and buy a good one, but probably you won't. There are a lot of unique complexities about investing at a distance, and even more specifically, investing in a market that's as difficult to invest in as Gary. If you Google Gary, it's disgusting. Like, you'd be like, oh my God, who would ever invest here? Okay. And I've been saying this for a while. I've said it on my channel. I said it at the event. In any market geographically located on the planet, in any single market, there are people who invest successfully and people who don't invest successfully. Find the ones who do it right, copy them. At any time, at any temporal location, at any time in the market, there's people who invest successfully and people who aren't. And I made this point at the Robinhood event. Do you think that Matt, the lumberjack landlord, doesn't know how to invest if the market's going up or down? He has plans for whatever the market does. If it stagnates, if it goes up, if it goes down, he has a playbook, and he just turns to whatever page that he needs to look at. And that's the play until the market shifts into another play. So people right now, and I think you said the title of this video is what? Are we in a recession? What should an investor do? Well, you find the people who are investing successfully and you copy them. Dion started after the last recession, but Zuber and Matt went through it, and I started after the last recession because Dion diversifies and has all these contingencies. And because I listen to Matt and listen to Zuber, I have been copying their strategies. So you can you can make money in an up or down market, right? The bears get paid, the bulls get paid, but it's the pigs who get slaughtered, right? What you don't want to do is be greedy and just be like, oh, it's a $60,000 house. I'm sure it's a good deal. That's not how it works. You need to learn. So, all right, I get off my soapbox.
Now, Denver, howdy. Thanks for joining the chat. Who was at the meetup at the Robin Hood Resort. It has a good point. Me and Cody and Christian were picking on you. That's absolutely factual. But the crowd was supportive of you.
I appreciate that.
And they got it. Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and just so everyone's clear, I know I kind of make sarcasm a thing. This came up because me and Zuber were talking exactly what you just said. It's not that investing locally or at a distance is better or worse. Where do you have the system in place, trusted boots on the ground? If somebody went to Gary, Indiana, because you did, and said, look, I'm going to buy a $29,000 house because it's cheap, they're probably going to lose money. That agent's going to have a great deal that everyone else, including you, passed on. And then that out-of-state investor with California or Seattle money is going to say, this is a great deal because it's cheap. You had Matsky, right? And you didn't just go, hey, Mark, you're investing there. I want to invest there too. You said, oh, you're investing there? That's awesome. Let me watch you for a while.
Yep.
Let me see you do several deals. Oh, it's in place. Okay, finally, I'll go out there and do this. That's what I was saying, is your strategy was brilliant because you piggybacked on a system that was in place. Don't just go pick a market because it's cheap. We were literally making a video called You Can Go Broke Buying Cheap.
Right.
But it just sounds better if we're frenemies, right?
I mean, yeah, if we have a little bit of a YouTube blood sport and I can make a Dion McNeeley exposed video, then, I'm going to take it for what I can.
I know. I'm very sad that I don't think it would be a 4-part series. Like, I just haven't achieved the level of stupidity it takes for you to actually have 4 videos worth of content to say how stupid that person is.
You have to give me an hour's worth of stupidity for me to make 4 videos on it. So.
Thank you, Dave, for saying it's okay to be a moderator on the channel. Invest to wealth. Howdy. Matthew, where you is, millennial? Hyder got slippery hands tonight. He's going to drop the ball. So there you go. And he's also got a phone that's dying. So if Hyder disappears, totally understand. Melinda, howdy. Hello from Colorado. I actually caught the live stream tonight. Okay, great. Hopefully you have a question you've been wondering about and you have the chance now to get it answered in real time. Michelle, I do have a question. I asked Matt on Sunday and want your opinion too. Vetting tenants. Tenant 1, family with 2 kids. Okay. 700 credit score, 3 times rent income, 350,000 in student loan debt. Tenant 2, disabled, 3 times the rent on Social Security income and housing voucher with 3 kids and another adult, also disabled, waiting on Social Security. So the waiting on Social Security means an unknown source of income that you can't prove and you can't guarantee. Would those people, I would resist calling it family versus single people versus because familial status can be a protected the way, depending on how they look at it, to set yourself up for discrimination. But you have option 3, low income, 2 jobs, 1.5 times income, housing voucher, 3 teens. No list for credit score on tenant 3. So the lumberjack landlord, Zuber, other good investors who have good systems look at this very different than I do. I don't care about income. I don't care if they don't have any, or if they have 5 times the rent. I know people making 6 figures, multiple 6 figures, late on every bill. They just don't care about their bills. They don't care about their credit score. I don't want that person as a tenant. I do know people that have worked to get their credit score up, and whether it's 600 is high in your area, then that's what they've worked it to. In my area, because there's such a large population, if they work to get it to 700, then that's high enough for me. So I would look at credit score above anything else and no evictions. I don't see eviction information on any of these tenants. You can't legally go, they have kids, I don't want to rent to them, but I had a tenant text me. So I've had now 4 official texts in the entire month of January so far from tenants. So this might be in an actual 2-hour month for me. Most months are 30 minutes, but this one might get all the way up to 2 hours because I count this time that it took to read the text, think, respond to the text. They said, hey, there's a U-Haul here with unit 4. Are they moving? Because if they are, I'd really like you not to rent to anybody with kids. That's the way a tenant sees it. Hey, can you just break the law for me and discriminate and not let anybody with kids live here? And ironically, it was somebody moving in one of their grandkids for a bit. So I'm not renting to someone with kids, but you have kids next to you now. I don't care about the Social Security not being proven. I don't want someone living here who doesn't have any source of income if they don't have a credit score that says they can pay their bills on time. The $350,000 in student loans, for the last, 2 years now, we've had forbearance going on in student loans. They haven't had to make payments. What's going to happen when that stops? Does their income accommodate that much of that coming in? It's again, right back to credit score. Are they going to care? If they've got a 600 credit score and they're renters and you can find places to rent, and all of a sudden your student loans come up, rent might be the last thing on their level of importance to pay. It's usually the first thing, especially when you are, I won't say owner operator, but when you're self-managing and you don't have a property management, they figure that you might have a big heart and they can walk all over it. And so I've actually had tenants in the last few years reach out and say, hey, can I pay my rent late? They're not calling their cell phone company or their internet company saying, hey, can I pay the bill late? They're calling the first person they think is the softest. So of those tenants, Mike, have you found the chat from Michelle?
I could not find. I scrolled up and down, and
okay. She's got a green name because she's a member, and I'll just go through really quick. I'll say it, and then you tell me what you think. It's right above the super chat from Tom Kine.
Oh, I don't think mine goes up that far. I actually
I'd scroll down. Okay,
yeah.
So I think we're good, Michelle. There. And also, Mike might be at the next Tacoma FI. He can actually answer you in person.
Heck yeah.
Which should be coming up in about 2 weeks. Glad you caught this, Melinda. Thank you. Gano, howdy. See if we can get down here. Success is a journey. Howdy.
My man.
Best defense is a good defense. I totally agree. My favorite quote from Jane from Firefly. I would kill a man in a fair fight. Or if I thought he was about to start one. Thanks, Gano. I hope the power doesn't go out and go to my head. This is from Dividend Dave. I want my mad cut of the super chats. Exactly, right. Your tax deductible super chats. Laser Focus Solutions. Howdy. Happy to be here with the elite group. You become the average of the people you hang out with. And if you're hanging out with people that are making these decisions and looking for this information, you're going to become that type of person. There is a reason why I'm trying to surround myself with people like Mike and Matt and Mike and Beth. And I was talking to Matt when we were in Vegas about the shift in my circle of friends. I've worked in the transportation industry, so I was mostly around employees. But outside of work, my circle of friends in the last couple of years reaching financial freedom, I'm trying to shift it to where it's more people who are focused on this. Better chance of success on reaching financial freedom, better chance of success of staying there. When you have a conversation and you talk about something like loan to value, debt structure, cash flow, you're more likely to make decisions that you want to be able to hold in that conversation and not be embarrassed of. But if you're hanging out with people that are not in any way caring about finances, you might make decisions you wouldn't if your peers would even understand what you're talking about. So I think we're in good company. Dividend Dave says, everybody hit that like button because every time you do, an angel gets its wings.
Or Beth Traverso joins the chat.
Right. Yes. If we get the likes up to, what are we at now? 47. If the likes hit 50, maybe, like we might time that just right. There we go. I'm looking for questions. Matt, I don't click on my own 3-hour live videos. Yeah, no kidding. I'm the same way. Make sure I'm not missing anything down here. Ronnie, howdy. What kind of insurance I should have on my rental properties? Want to handle that one, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, so me personally, when I make my choice for insurance, I use National Real Estate Insurance Group, NREIG. And what I'm essentially going for is I just want like catastrophic coverage. So I have, when I can, like a $10,000 deductible, because if something happens to my properties, I'm going to pay for it myself out of pocket. Because if you try to make a claim on every little thing that breaks, very quickly your insurance company is going to drop you, or your rates are going to go through the roof, and that's going to ruin your payments. And then if you try to go to a different insurance company, one of the questions they're going to ask you is, well, when was the last time you made a claim? So if you're making claims frivolously or needlessly, it's not going to work out to your advantage. So when I look at my cost for insurance, I want catastrophic insurance for the roof blowing off, a tree falling on the property, something major happening. So anything. So then what I do is I prioritize a higher deductible, like $10,000, because if I do that, it gives me a much lower monthly payment. And I would rather have a lower monthly payment on my insurance so that I can cash flow the property better, knowing that any small repairs are going to be on me, but anything major is still covered. That's my philosophy and how I handle it. I don't know if it's different from Dion.
Very similar. I did the highest deductible possible. The way I do with insurance is I call several of the larger ones to get quotes, and then I also go to an insurance broker, and whichever one has the best deal, and that's not the cheapest price sometimes, it's the best coverage for what I'm looking for, is who I go with. So talk to a broker because they're going to compare several different companies, but then also call different companies for quotes, because sometimes one is better than the other. And just like lenders, you can actually show insurance companies their quotes to each other to see something that they would recognize that you would miss. I got it at 4 properties, but at 3 properties, I probably should have added an umbrella policy once the value of the property started to be large enough to where a suit can exceed the value of one property and a bankruptcy wouldn't fix it. And so after 4 properties, I added a $2 million umbrella policy, which costs a bit at the time, $550 a year. Now it's like $630, I think, a year. So it's gone up a little bit. One of the weird requirements with umbrella policy is they also require that your auto be through whoever's doing the umbrella, and that the auto coverage is higher than normal, whatever the state minimums are here, at least here in Washington. And it added like $6 or something to the auto insurance, but it was something they required. And then just like Mike said, unless you absolutely have to, I would never make a claim on insurance. So I have a $10,000 deductible on a property. If the bill was $30,000, I'd still consider possibly just paying for it out of reserves, because I had a claim in 2006, and for 5 years, nobody would touch me with insurance. And this was just on a home before I was an investor. It was just a home that I owned or was buying. And it was like a $1,300 claim. My rates tripled and no one else would insure me. So imagine if that happens at a larger portfolio. It better be a significant claim for me to actually utilize that. I also require that my renters, in my leases, it says renters are required to have rental insurance, renters insurance. I don't care if they do. I care that requirement is in my lease, so that if they ever have a problem, I can say, look, that's not a me problem. That's you were required to have the insurance. I don't care, because they can show you a printed out fake document. There's no way you're going to verify it, but you can show that you have a lease that you both signed that said that any claims were going to have to be theirs because they had to have renter's insurance. So that's kind of how I look at insurance. All-nighter hider, still no internet.
Yeah, Matt's just chilling.
Laser focus solution to lumberjack landlord. Seats full in the first boot camp yet? Good question. Matthew Paris. Yes, housing is crashing. Please keep listening to them. Like the short that we did at the Robin Hood Resort.
Yeah.
I kind of like that they keep saying that, because it's less competition for the people that aren't stupid and are going to actually be buying things. Matt Bob, I submitted a super chat prior to show starting and I don't see the question. How does that work? Please repost the question and I will get to it.
Yeah, sometimes that was the question. He did repost and we did that super chat. That was the $9.99 chat from him.
All right, so maybe it showed up later. All right, awesome. Thank you. And thank you, Mike, for
that's why I was getting lost. I was looking for his question and then I actually bumped out of the video and then I screwed myself.
There you go. Fair enough. All-nighter harder. I wish I could afford it, but not today. Glover, did I miss the housing crash? Yes, very sorry. Yeah. Like summer in Washington, I hope it happens on a weekend.
Yeah.
Here. So I'm looking at my phone like a teenager again. I want to see this question here, because the answer that Matthew says is raise your credit limits, I suggest. Missed the question that started prompted that. Rob, the only thing Matt doesn't make a plan for is maintaining his supply of Rice Krispies in a pandemic. That was a failure. Michael Anthony, howdy. NYSE says certain trades to be canceled after glitch at open exchange. Post list of more than 250 stocks affected by error.
Yeah, I haven't decided if I think Michael Anthony is just is a bot or spammer, or if he's an actual person, because he posted like 3 separate stock related questions to a channel that never follows stock stuff. So if you're real, then post something that seems a little more real, buddy.
Right. And if you're a bot, just like if you're not here, raise your hand. Matthew, when does the Dion exposed drop? Trying to think of what is the easiest way to expose me.
Well, I was trying to get you down to jump in the water, but see, there I was, brave. I was ready to jump in the lake.
Is that how you're going to play this?
So cold.
We were both ready, and it
leave.
never came up. But
I
go
said,
ahead.
Let's do it. We promised people, and Dion was like, "They won't care. They won't hold us accountable."
Hang on, we promised people. No, I saw couple of people ask and say they were going to super chat Cody and Christian if we would jump in the water. Never saw a super chat. Never saw anybody ask it at the event. So I will do stupid stuff all day long. I'm in line for stupid stuff. But either there's a girl to impress.
Yeah, I was going to say not the marriage.
Stupid stuff. That's how you do it, right? Or an audience.
Yeah.
Justin, howdy. I would think the opposite about cheap properties. I would think that the lower the barrier to entry, the more competition, the harder it is to make money. So yeah, the more competition, the harder it is to make money. But if it's cheap, why is it cheap? Right. There's cheap properties in Washington state in places nobody would live. There's the average fourplex is going for 1.2 to 1.3 million, and there's one listed right now for 800 and something. Right off of McKinley Avenue in Tacoma. And that's all it takes for everybody to say, nope, I wouldn't even send a property manager there to collect the rents. That fourplex to me, I don't know that I would pay $400,000 for it, right? Just because of the area. So cheap isn't good. And the barrier to entry to buying that one is lower than buying the ones that are 1.2, 1.3, but the person that buys the 1.3 is going to make more money. The McKinley Avenue is just going to be a nightmare. Wandering Doc, howdy. Yes, Dave sings. He sent me a Christmas carol, which I played on a live stream. And we should do karaoke, absolutely. For karaoke, though, I will need a lot of water.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yum sing. Water that makes your eyes water. Nick, howdy. Great event at the Robin Hood this weekend. Great meeting you. And Mike, I think it was great to meet you too.
Yeah, Nick was a good dude. Cool dude from the area. Gym teacher, working with kids and stuff like that. What a nice guy.
That's what's great about this is the best investors aren't usually people that make several $100,000 a year. The motivation to reach financial freedom, I think, is stronger if you're between that 40,000 to 100,000 range.
Right.
Denver Gray. Getting around the right people is why I went up to the event. Me too. Hard to find other investors my age in my market. Everyone is much older. That's why I was there, to make the average age of the room go up by 15 years. As an average, right? Which is fine most of the time, but it's nicer to chat with other. And then I lost the chat. Yeah, it's really good to be around. Here's what's kind of ironic to me. I really enjoy being around Mike, millennial Mike. I have a son the same age, and I can't talk real estate with my son or his friends. Actually, and even more ironic and more nerdy is I play World of Warcraft with a group of people about the same age. And you want to get attacked online? Mention capitalism.
Yeah, no kidding.
You want to find a socialist society? They're all playing WoW.
Oh, yeah.
Gano just got my green light for closing on my sixth rental. Sorry. Awesome. Congratulations. That is too cool.
Oh, there she is.
Hey there.
Howdy.
Missed you guys.
Didn't mean to put you on the
For
spot and say,
for
hey,
the
if you're in
moment.
the
I
chat, you
know,
better
nothing
jump
like
in.
a little pressure. Yeah, to get me on here. So no, it's all good. Yeah. I heard this is where the cool
I
kids
have a
are.
question
So
for a top 1% Seattle real estate agent.
what's that?
You ready for? Okay. So
Yeah.
we've been talking and discussing about how, a lot of people are talking about the market's crashing and everything like that. So Beth, my question to you, being an expert in the Seattle real estate market, you were seeing a huge crash in transactions. I know that you talked about that with like Zuber, how there was a lot less people trying to buy. But then only like a couple weeks later, it seemed like you guys had a video where you talked about people coming back as soon as interest rates dipped down below 6%. So could you just explain to us, because a lot of people say cities like Seattle will lead the giant crash in prices. Can you give us just a little history of what's happened the last few months here and break it down?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting what we're seeing. And we agents that are active in the market, we see what's happening way before it ever shows up in any kind of headline or data. So that's old news by the time it comes out in the media. So what I'm seeing is, you are right that we still are seeing a big drop in transactions. Our prices have not crashed. They're holding pretty steady. I mean, they're down from the peak that we had in the insanity of the first quarter of 2022, where we were having houses go 30-40% over list price on typical homes of, insane terms with hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash released immediately to the seller. And, it was really crazy. And so that has changed, and so as we go year over year through that, this first quarter, I think it's going to look negative and sound scary when the reports come out. But what we're seeing as people who, brokers like me that are, in it every day, is that we're seeing an uptick in buyers and interest just since January 1st, which we always see. January is always the month that sets the tone for us. We always know that what happens in January is going to be what's going to carry us through at least the first part of the year. And that's when we see the jumps. That's when we see all the crazy happen, if it's going to happen. Now, I'm not seeing crazy, but I am seeing more coming in. And it's interesting that I'm seeing more buyers coming off the sidelines because they're ready to buy and they're looking around and there's nothing for sale. Right. So they get motivated when they see something good hit the market, and then they're surprised when they're not the only one that's interested. And I've been seeing, I don't know what you've been seeing around your area, Dion, but what I'm seeing is Seattle proper has been one of the areas, like in the city of Seattle, there's different Seattles. There's the city of Seattle, and then there's the greater Seattle area, which is King County. And then there's Case-Shiller, Seattle, which includes Snohomish,
Tacoma, Everett,
like everything, it's so hard to make any sense of that. But it's all Seattle, right? So, but like in Seattle, at the city limits of Seattle, I have some broker friends there, and one in particular, he just had a house listed that he said he was expecting 5 to 10 offers on it. And I've been hearing also down in Renton and some other areas to the south and a little bit to the north, those areas are popping too, where we're seeing bidding wars. I have not heard much yet as far as how high those are going over list price and what the terms are on those, but it's interesting that it's happening at all because we haven't seen that in a good 6 months or so.
Right.
So it's very similar here in Pearson, Thurston County. So we're further south of where Beth is located and a little more rural, at least in my opinion, not where you live, but where your property is investing is done. Mike and I talked about at the very beginning of this live stream, a duplex popped up that I found during my members only live stream last week that I was actually not a terrible deal. I looked at 18 that sucked. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, what's this one? And so at the very end of the live stream, we actually go into one that I ended up making an offer on. It had been on the market, a little over 5 days, which is long for Pearson, Thurston County. We're not quite gone in 2 or 3 hours anymore like we were the last couple of years.
Yeah.
So I did all cash, a little below asking, thought I'll at least get on their radar. 50,000 above asking. Could have been 40,000. I have to look to verify, but it was 40 or 50,000 above, multiple cash offers, all over asking, several waiving contingencies. So it's definitely a real estate crash. There's no buyers, and I don't know how anybody's going to survive with the massive drop in prices that must happen in the next couple of months, right? That, like, to stick with the narrative that we keep hearing.
I know. Yeah.
So I have a follow-up question for Beth, because since she's here, we should definitely bank on her expertise. So we talked about like motivation for buyers and interest rates coming down. Are you talking still with a decent amount of people who want to sell their house? And if you're talking with people who want to sell, are you advising them it's a good or bad time? And if you're not talking to people who want to sell, like how many normal sellers would you normally talk to, or potential sellers versus right now? Like what's the holdup on that side?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's nuanced, because everybody's got their own story and it's different. So, but I personally deal with more sellers than buyers. But I do work with both, and my team members work with buyers a lot more than I do. But I'm talking to about the same number of sellers that I normally would this time of year. I've been talking to maybe a handful of new ones every week. And their stories vary, but a lot of them are people that everyone seems to get it. Like the news is not new at this point that the market shifted, and everybody knows that. So nobody's expecting, I haven't had anybody yet expect to get peak pricing in a very long time. People get it. They're watching Zillow, they see what their neighbors are selling for, and they're paying attention. They're pretty well educated in what's going on in the real estate market just by watching and observing and reading. But a lot of the people that I talk to are people that have been in their homes for decades, and they're moving out of the area they're moving all the way away. They're not necessarily upgrading locally. They tend to be moving to be closer to kids. They're moving out of state. This is their retirement a lot of the time, and they're using the proceeds from their home as to fund their retirement, or at least a portion of it. So because a lot of them are very equity rich, they may have, some have mortgages but many don't, and they've got a huge amount of equity, and they're rolling that into their next phase of life where they're cashing out, they're buying cash somewhere else and boosting those markets,
Right.
So there's still a lot of that. That's been going on for a while, but that's one of those things where like life changes. I mean, life goes on is what I mean. It's like people's lives are always going to be changing, and they don't want to sit around trying to time the market. We all know that that's kind of a risky thing. Like, you don't know. All we can work with is what we have now. I don't know if it's going to be better later, and they don't want to wait next year to be closer to their grandkids or try to maybe get a little bit more money. That's not really the way they're thinking most of the time. Investors think that way because we're wired that way. It's different for us. So yeah.
That timing the market is the one that gets me. So many people that we know are waiting for rates or prices to do X, Y. It doesn't matter what it is. If they're waiting for that, it's going to end up costing them. But Beth, I would like to actually make a short video. So I'm going to hit record if you're okay with that. And then I'm going to ask you a question that isn't as much recession based as specific to something that's always bothered me. And I get this question from a lot of people, but I think you're the one person who can actually answer the question.
Oh boy, this is
no pressure, Beth.
Will I pass the test? I don't know.
So please don't leave the video. I'm actually going to do an intro and an outro, but we're going to stay here in the live.
Okay. All right.
Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. We're actually doing this video in the middle of a live stream because I have a question that I think I have the one person that we know. I have Millennial Mike here, but Beth Traverso is here. I think, Beth, you're the one person who can actually answer this question. Hopefully you can give me some clarity because this has always bothered me.
Let's give it a shot. I can't wait to hear what it is.
So people can understand how how I think you're qualified to answer this question. How long have you been a real estate agent?
25 years.
Okay. And you own rental properties?
Yes.
Okay. And you invest in and around Seattle?
Correct.
And your husband is a contractor, so you guys have a great synergy on getting rehabs done and those kind of things. Yeah. So you're a top rated agent. So you're the source of the information for this question. I hear this statistic often. 90% of real estate agents never own one rental property. So what makes me curious is my agents interact with guys like me, fairly functioning, low intellect, average person, reaches financial freedom and never has to work again in their life. And the agents I work with are super smart. Why do so many agents, so many realtors not own rental properties?
Well, the ones that I talk to, I'm always trying to sell them on it, right? Like, come on, guys, this is the best thing. You need to do this. Look how great this has been. Thankfully, I had mentors early on that showed me the way, and I listened and took action. But honestly, what I hear from realtors is the same as what I hear from everybody else. They feel like they can't do it. They maybe think that it's for somebody else. They think it's toilets overflowing at 2 a.m. It's going to be their problem somehow. And they think it's maybe they don't have the money potentially. They're not thinking like investors. There's a lot of reasons for that. So were any of those the ones that you were thinking, or?
Yeah. So what I was hoping for was that behind the door closed realtors going, oh, these investors are so stupid. We keep making so much money from them. And then, and apparently that's not the case.
You know what? I've never heard that.
No, my assumption
sorry.
was a lot of people say, I'm going to quit the W-2 to get into real estate so I can own rentals. They get into real estate as an agent. Then they have inconsistent income, change in careers, don't have lendability. Banks don't want to give them money. Or there are people who do it as a part-time side hustle, thinking that becoming an agent is how you get into real estate. So I feel a lot better that your answer was fairly close to what I thought.
Yeah, and it is true, being self-employed, it is harder to qualify. So you have to be you have to be producing enough income over enough period of time that you qualify to purchase. And you have to be good at saving your money too. With real estate, there's a lot of ups and downs. For myself and others that are doing consistent business, we learn to budget so that you can ride out those times and to constantly be generating new business, because people might be a little bit too much in the weeds, but a lot of real estate agents, there's this roller coaster that they do where they get busy, they get a couple clients, they get busy, they got some deals that take up a bunch of their time, and they drop all their prospecting and lead generation, as we call it, and they focus on those couple of deals. But then a month later, those deals are closed, you get paid, but then your pipeline is dry because you're not consistently generating new business. And that can make it tough to be an investor too. And so they get stuck in this kind of like feast or famine kind of a mindset and way of doing business, where they get the checks can be big sometimes, and it's like, okay, we're going on vacation and we're going to go shopping and do fun things. And it takes a certain discipline to be an investor, a real estate investor, or probably any kind of investor. I can only speak to real estate, but you have to be ready. You have to be disciplined enough to have a big check, put some away, save some for reserves, save some for investing. Think of this as a long-term, because real estate, I think it's kind of funny when I know I'm jumping around a little bit, but I think it's kind of funny when people think I'm going to retire from my W-2 and they think getting a job like mine is somehow being retired, because I've never had a W-2. Like, well, since I know not in any real sense, if I ever had a W-2, I'm not retired. So like, this is not retired what I'm doing. I'm a business owner and I'm working really hard. And, I have my investments that make it so I don't have to work hard if I want us to switch over to that, but it's two very different things. So just getting out of that W-2 rat race is one thing. And I love it. I could never have a corporate job. Never had one, never could have one. But it's not, but it takes, you have to be driven as a self-employed business owner to make it happen for yourself, because there's nobody going to nag you to get you out of bed. You've got to be driven. There's something has to drive you inside to be successful with that. And I think that has to do with real estate investing as well. You have to be driven to do that. Something has to be propelling you away from something that you don't want and towards something that you do want. And that has to be strong enough for you to be patient over the time that it takes to accumulate that and watch that grow and pay off. So
yeah, there's a large difference between that entrepreneurial investor and employee mindset. And I think some realtors could really learn from someone like Stephan. You talked about, you're working your pipeline and then you're working your deals and you're working your pipeline. And so you get this fluctuating. He had the same thing where you'd have 6 months with no income, get a big check, a couple months with no income, get a big check. So he started buying rentals for consistent income to be able to do real estate better. So it wasn't even he was trying to reach financial freedom he was trying to reach financial stability. So
right.
Thank you for answering that question. I appreciate it. Millennial Mike and I are both investors. And if you'd like to see the video where we talk about how we picked our agents and whether they had to be investors or not, click on this video right here, which is a video we're going to make, but not today.
Yeah.
Thank you. That will
All right.
come out, and because most people won't click on a 3-hour video, and you don't have to stay for the whole 3 hours, but that's what they're going to see when they see the thumbnail on YouTube. They're going to say, wow, 3 hours, who would watch that, right? I have some people who won't watch a 10-minute video because they want to see the 3-hour one, because they're trying to fill space while they're driving from one location to another.
Yeah.
I really do wish more agents would invest in real estate. I mean, one of the very first things when I was a newbie rookie agent was the guy that owned the brokerage was, did a talk with all the agents, had a sales meeting or whatever. And it was all about like, you guys got to, like nobody knows it like you do. You see the deals, you're out there, save your money, invest, and get, the way to make money in real estate is to own it, not to sell it. I think selling real estate like I'm doing is kind of like flipping, like it's a job. I don't see that as, investing is a different thing. So.
Right. I think we all
That's
say,
where the real
flipping
money's
is episodical. You stop working, the money stops coming in.
Yeah.
Laura Semeniago says, happy to see Beth joining. Beth, do you give gifts to your tenants for holidays? Curious to know your opinion.
No, I don't. But I think it's just because I find, it's not because I don't know them mostly. There's part of that, like I don't know them, and I don't. I get overwhelmed with the holidays, honestly, with getting gifts as a mother and a business person and everything else I got going on. Like there's so many people that you could give gifts to. It seems like it's in the hundreds, and I just feel overwhelmed by that. So I've learned to kind of be a little more streamlined with that. So for the holidays, and I don't, some of it's laziness too. It's like, I only have capacity to do so much. So I mean, if I was going to do it, I can tell you I would have somebody else do that. I'd have my assistant or someone like get a nice gift and send it out to everybody.
The main reason I don't do, Mike, I'll let you answer first. Do you do gifts for your tenants?
I did do gifts for the tenant just on the other side of my house hack, but that's because I treat them as a neighbor, because I literally live right here. Not only are they my tenant, they're also my neighbor, but I don't do for any of the people that are at my rentals in Gary. So when the people next door had kids, I bought their kids like little action figure type thing, something like that.
So I've heard of a couple people like Matt, the lumberjack landlord, say, well, I have 137 units. It would be this thing. And Beth, it would be kind of economy of scale. I almost think it would be easier to buy presents for 100 tenants than it would be for 5, because you could automate it. You could say, assistant, here's your job. You have 25 or 50 or whatever dollars per tenant. Go buy this thing and send it out. Here's why I don't. And here's why I think it's actually kind of an insult. If they're your neighbor in your duplex, absolutely, totally makes sense, because they're your neighbor. It's not that they're your tenant. As a business owner, this is a policy that I think you should at least consider. Never gift something to somebody you profit from, because you're taking the profit that they gave you, converting it to a gift that you give them that they might not have wanted. That person would have preferred to not have you profit enough to buy them a gift. If you are profiting so much that you can give their money away to them, to your other tenants, then your rent should be lower. That's the mindset of the tenant. That's
Maybe
the
they
mindset
feel like
of
they're buying a gift with their money, and that doesn't.
With their money, exactly. So do they feel good that it was thoughtful? A card, sure, maybe. If they live right next to you, Laura, you are house hacking. You are right next to your tenants. Mike is right next to them. In my duplex, I was right next to them. On my fourplex, I don't think I've ever met them. I never talked to the units here. We never see each other. It's weird. There must be vampires or something. But a gift means I'm taking your money. I'm going to convert it into something I would like and give it to you. That's the main reason I don't do gifts. So that's a really
I don't think
question.
anybody really expects it either.
No.
I mean, it's a nice gesture. Like if you knew somebody and like they had a baby or something, then sure, send them a nice gift for the arrival of the baby or something, but it's just never been something I've done.
So, Beth, we made a video one time about the binder, and I'm making a video soon with 2 friends who've done the binder strategy. And then the tenant suggested a number, and both Michelle and Dan asked for a lower amount than what the tenant suggested. So Beto, howdy, leaves a comment here. Hi, Deanna, I went back to my tenant. So recently you did a question where you did the binder strategy and the tenant suggested $50, and that's not enough. So what would you do? I said, it's an ongoing conversation. You went back, and after the conversation, she decided 200 would be great. And I have done the binder 3 times this year for $200, all 3 times. Thank you. Have you incorporated the binder at all with your investing strategy yet, Beth? I know we had just talked about it a little while ago and kind of made the video. Or you might already be doing a version of it like the Lumberjack does, where he would send comps through emails. Have you had a chance to use it?
So I think since we talked, I only had one turnover and my property manager handled it. So, no.
Fair enough.
But I would. Yeah.
I think it was Anna Kay, well, somebody who comments, and we've met at the Tacoma FI meetup, used the binder strategy on her property manager and got the rents where they needed to be.
Yeah, it was, and both were already with a new turnover, you kind of get to go to market rate anyway. So, it's for renewals, right? So,
Right.
And it's interesting, like we did have a couple renewals that were just coming up from the first year. And for the first time in a while, at least in our area, it seemed like the market rents are not higher than what we had them at a year ago. So I decided on my own, just to leave them where they were and not push it higher. So
I had such
already were so high. It's, I think Mountlake Terrace, right, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, one of them was at just a split level in Mountlake Terrace. We're getting like $3,500 a month for it. I'm like, how much higher can you get?
Yeah, no kidding.
I'm like, we're lucky if they even want to renew at that price. Like,
right.
I'm not touching that. So, no need for the binder on that. So, just left it, because I think that's definitely market rate still.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that was my experience too. Rents went up so much in 2021, 2022 that I don't think I'm doing rent increases, any tenants in this year, unless a tenant moves out. I will then look at market rents and make the right adjustment. But most people call landlords super greedy. All you do is jack the rents up. No, we want the rents where the tenant's going to stay. We don't want to lose money. One of the biggest mistakes an owner does, and one of the reasons why so many owners are former landlords, is some of them never raise the rent. If you're in any of the investing groups like Choose FI and you talk about rent increase, a whole bunch of people will jump in the chat who've never owned a rental and say, if I owned a rental, I'd never raise the rent because you could lose a good tenant. Well, you can lose the asset.
On the rental.
Right. Thank you, James J, for the support. I appreciate that. I want to make sure we're not missing.
He asked a question too. His question after his super chat says, hi, everyone. What is your advice for someone that is looking to invest out of state, that lives and is stuck with obligations in a high cost of living area where house hacking is not an option in their strategy?
That sounds like one for you.
I will answer it.
It's the millennial Mike question.
Yeah.
My boy, James J, Jimmy J. Yeah, that's a great question. So a friend of mine named Darius, he has been going back and forth. He was trying to get a house hack. Should he house hack? Should he keep living with his parents? And it's a high cost of living here in Seattle as well. And he eventually decided to buy his first and his second rentals out of state in Gary, Indiana, same place as me. When he finally got himself the money to be able to buy a house hack, it was literally during the high point of like 2021 and early 2022, where it was just crazy. I mean, he couldn't possibly have found himself anything locally, and he didn't want to just stand by on the sidelines. He and I are friends. And so I helped him get started. So if you want the advice on how to get started investing out of state, I have multiple different live streams on my channel that talk about in very great detail, where people who are new people wanting to learn will ask me questions that I answer. But the quick summarized version is you need to first work on building a network of other investors that invest successfully somewhere else. They asked us the question at the Robinhood, how would I do it if I had to start all over? The number one thing I said I would do is I would just find someone else who's already successfully investing out of state at a distance. And then I would befriend that person. And then from there, I would take all of the advice they gave me. But if you find those other investors you can network with that will help you, then from there, they will put you in contact with a property manager, the right real estate agents, the right contractors. They'll help you assess the right deals. You'll be able to bounce your ideas off of them to make sure that the deal you're looking at is a good or great deal and not an average or bad deal. But it all starts with finding the coach, finding the mentor, finding the seasoned veteran, and not just trying to do it on your own. Because if you do, you might get lucky or you might screw yourself over. So that would be my advice, the quick and dirty version of it.
One of the things I really like is that if somebody comes with a question and says, I want to self-manage a large portfolio and I want to handle a bunch of rehabs myself and I want to know the best way to save money, get the right deal. I'm like, here's lumberjack landlord.
Right. Bail me out.
If somebody wants to know how do I invest out of state, I go, here's Millennial Mike's channel, and he answers questions. That's why our circle, if somebody has agent questions, I'm not going to send them to Zuber. I'm not going to send them to Matt or me or you. It's going to go to Beth. I'm going to say, look, here's this person we know who's willing to help, willing to answer questions, that actually is working in the industry. And bonus is investing in real estate, which is, like I said, it's a rare thing for agents. Which even with your question, with your answer, Beth, I'm still confused because.
Well, what's confusing? Let's see if we can clear it up.
So that's the thing. It's not that your answer didn't clear it up, as your answer was very similar to mine. It's like there are several reasons. The people watching this video right now that are trying to get on the property ladder, trying to grow the portfolio, stabilize the portfolio, increase the cash flow, reach financial freedom, walk away from a job, even if they like it, time freedom, win out, all that kind of stuff. Like, it just seems intrinsic that we would go, if I could find a great deal, I'm going to buy it. I guarantee an agent with enough experience, working with enough investors, has seen those great deals. And so it's not that your answer didn't solve it. It's that the person confuses me. The person is there.
I think if you could just distill it down to something that they don't think they can.
Yeah.
They think that requires cash. I don't have cash, or that requires a certain fortitude that maybe I don't have, or it's scary.
Right. I like the way I like to look at that. The power of thought is, if you think you can, you're going to, and if you think you can't, someone else is going to. And that's with real estate. There's someone else is going to do the thing you thought you couldn't, with probably less resources and less time availability. Yeah.
I've talked to a lot of agents that I know they can. It's like, I know you can do it. They just, for whatever reason, just don't have. Some don't have the desire to also, but it's hard to get to the bottom of why, but it's as many reasons as anybody else out there has. But it's just that much more frustrating because it's literally dropped in your lap, like here's this, somebody might come to you. Like I've had people come to me directly. Like, I have a house that's going to be foreclosed on next week. I need a cash buyer today. And there's an opportunity. So
that's always, and I don't know how many of the details I'll have memorized, and the person has retired and is no longer an agent, so I don't think I would get them in trouble, but there's a reason why he probably never wanted to make the video. I have an acquaintance who's been investing for a few decades, has 30 rentals. He's an agent, and he had several agents working for him. So his position was running a brokerage. A client walks in the door and says, I have 7 residents on one property. So it's like 5 acres, 7 houses. 2 are mobile homes, the rest are stick built. And I want to sell it. I went into one place and they offered me $120,000, and I was very offended. So my friend, who's the agent, said, well, I'd give you 124. He purchased it for 124 and the person was happy. Like, those kind of deals walking in the door, I bet there are agents that would think, this sounds like an amazing deal. Let me call my investor friend who's going to buy this from you. Mm-hmm. So it breaks my brain every time I think about that.
Yeah. And there, with agents too, there's ethical things you have to work around too, which I've learned how to have those conversations and have that communication and give them the options and let the owner decide what's best for them and make sure the contract is structured right. So we do have those extra layers to it. We got to make sure we're on the straight and narrow ethically. Right.
And not that I want to be unethical, but it is one of the long list of reasons why I'm not an agent. I don't want to know what the rules are. It's not that I don't want to be ethical. It's that I just don't want to have to know what the rules are. Yeah. I want to do things like send a love letter to a seller, or send parts of the inspection report to negotiate my price, or some of the things that an agent can't do in certain areas. So I want to answer.
Break it to you, but buyers can't deliver part of the inspection report either under our contract, because it's the buyer that's part of the contract.
If you don't know the rules,
then you waive your inspection unintentionally.
But see, I'm not under contract yet. So like, there's all kinds of ways around that.
Yeah.
Still ethically, still communicating, still, just if you're an agent, you have to know those things.
Yes, you do. And it's always changing too. As soon as you've got it figured out, they change it all.
Here's a question from Rob for Beth. And then I want to answer 2 quick questions, and then I'm going to get to the the giveaway. Rob, Beth, how can we engage agents when looking for subject to?
A good question I've had, actually. I'm glad Rob asked that. How do you proposition? Because I want to proposition an agent. I want to say, hey, if you have a buyer who might be underwater because they bought near the top and they have to sell for whatever reason, and if they sell, they're going to have to cut a check. And rather than cut the check, maybe we could do a deal where I could take over their existing mortgage payments. How do I come to the agent and explain that to the agent where the agent doesn't feel like they're going to not get paid their commission and where they can understand it if they've never heard of it before?
That's an interesting one that I'd have to think about my answer a little bit, because that's not something that comes up in my realm, because the mortgage amounts are too high. It's like, the dollar amounts it doesn't make, and I haven't had that certain type of seller or owner really. But I have had people just kind of randomly just dial in asking, like, would your seller do this? Would your seller do that? I've been getting a lot of that lately too. People just who aren't really making offers, but just reaching out. Kind of, it's almost like they're just spraying everybody to see who will answer them. And I do answer them because I actually know what subject to is. I think a lot of agents just don't know what that is. They don't know if it's legal. Right. It might be good to just maybe have some like FAQs about that, or just, explain in really, really rudimentary terms what that means and how they would get paid and who that. It's important not to just ask the agent, but to know like what kind of seller it is. It's going to be that's going to speak to. And honestly, it's probably a lot of that stuff would just be through networking. Honestly, like if you're networking with people that are working with the type of seller that might be of value to, so that when they think of that, when they say, and just say, if you're just having a friendly conversation with somebody, say, if you come across this situation, I'm your guy or gal.
Right.
So,
yeah, that's
when it pops up, they think of you. But it's really hard because agents, I get dozens of calls every day from people that are just trying to spam or sell or something, and it's not just the people trying to do subject to or whatever, or wholesalers or things like that, but it's like all the people trying to sell me. I'm just a target for lead gen systems or whatever. I mean, lenders, anything you can think of, so it's really, really hard to get through that, penetrate that wall, because that callus is pretty thick at this point with agents and what we deal with.
Right.
So you're gonna have to get to know people. It's all, I hate to say it, but that's really the best way to do it, is get to know people personally so that they get it. And when they find those people, they match you.
Penetrating that wall is going to be difficult with the amount of spam that's out there. As investors, we know that because of all the random texts and calls you get at all hours of the day on when you sell your property. And if you get to know somebody, I think you nailed it, Beth, with let me put it in right to get you paid. And then let's work on the deal. Because that's the first knee-jerk reaction from an agent, is anything that they consider creative is how do you get around your fees, and what agent's going to want to work with that.
Right.
Yeah. And also it sounds like hard, and not typical. And how do we structure? I saw this a lot when short sales were everywhere. We all had to get really creative and jump through some flaming hoops to make and crawl through the dirt to get any deal done. That's what it took. And that hasn't been how it's been since then, so not to say, but I would say like on your typical deal subject, even approaching subject to on just a vanilla deal out there where it just wouldn't even make sense to even bring it up most of the time. Right. It's a very specific scenario. So you need to try to find who's working with those people in that scenario. And there's agents out there that are digging for that, and so maybe just getting to know that network, and it is going to be a lot of agents too, it's going to be, a lot of agent investors, people that are that niche that are doing that, working with the distressed sellers, working with the people who got to get creative because they can't do it the normal way.
Right. I got to take off, but I had to read one thing for Beth real quick because she's far too humble to read it herself. So this is a post from Beth's Facebook page. And for those of you out there who want to know what an expert she is, she goes, I always feel a little odd about blowing my own horn, but I'm so proud of the Beth Traverso Group and what we accomplished in 2022. We helped 86 families and sold $91 million in real estate. So if you don't think Beth's about it, she's about it. She's a pro. Beth, you're killing
Thank
it.
you.
Dion, I'll see you later. I'll talk to you guys later. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike. So we'll be wrapping up here. There's 2 more questions I want to cover, but I just put my email in the chat. So any comment that comes after that says, thank you, Beth and Mike, is going to have a chance to win either, you have your choice, an hour one-on-one consultation call where basically we look at your portfolio and I tell you what I think. So it's not advice. It's just, if I was in the situation, here's what I would probably do. Or you can choose an audiobook. Right? I buy the audiobook, I send it to your account. So whichever you prefer. So thank you, Beth and Mike, coming up after that. But the 2 questions I want to cover really quick before we wrap up, Beth, and I will let you get back to your life since this was just sprung on you because you were like, oh, let me see what's going on YouTube. And then Mike peer pressured you into coming in here, which I really appreciate.
I love it. Happy it all worked out. It's been fun.
Art T asks, what would you do? Inherited tenant damaged front door, was supposedly damaged prior to her moving in, and the landlord just left as is. The tenant's asking to replace. So they purchased a property, front door's damaged. Tenant says it was always like that. The new owner seems to think that the tenant caused the problem. What would you do?
I would just replace the door and not worry about it. I just move on. There's bigger things to worry about. That is not. And also, you're the new one. You're the new owner. It goes a long way toward goodwill with that tenant if you just fix that door, because you'll never be able to prove probably who damaged it or why. It'll never be, they'll never say it was them. And just fix the dang door.
Yeah, I looked at it the same as that's when you buy a property, you need to have reserves. Lender's going to require that. You should have reserves even if you're doing an all cash deal. Down payment, closing costs, and money for immediate repairs. Immediate repairs are going to be things like the door, which you hopefully found out during the inspection. And if the tenant damages the door again when they move out, that's what their deposit is for. You will get the deposit from the title company that they paid the previous owner when they moved in. So I agree with that. The other one, I can't find it, but it was somebody asking, and I think they asked twice, so I want to make sure we cover it. How close is Rentometer to the housing authority's expected rent payments? So first question, Beth, do you have any voucher program tenants in your portfolio?
No, I don't. So I don't think I'm qualified to answer that one.
Okay. Second, how accurate do you think Rentometer is to your current rent?
It's way off. I haven't looked at it in probably a year because of that.
Yep, I totally agree. And that's why I've stopped using it too. Between 2015, 2020, rents were going up kind of steadily at the same pace, and Rentometer was using 3 month, 6 month, 9 month, 12 month historical data, and they could be within 5 to 10%. Since 2020, I haven't seen them be within 30% of where the rents are in my market when I've done the binder strategy, tenant turnover. So I've pretty much stopped using them. They're even off from what the housing authority will pay. So hopefully they get that fixed. Either rents stabilize, which would be great, because like you said, exactly, I agree 100% with what you say. How can people afford to pay it going up? Which I totally agree, understand why they can, because I don't know if you're tracking this, Beth, but I've made a couple of videos on the affordability index is flawed. In between, 2000 and 2020, it made total sense. We had a small percentage of people working remotely. So you could look at an area's income and say, these people make this much money. The average house is this. We can have this index that says the average person has this much likelihood of being able to afford the average priced house. Since 2020, remote work has become more and more likely. It's a lagging indicator. So where people lived, where they worked, where they earned their money is, we don't even know what happened in 2021 yet, based on the data, let alone what the actual affordability index is. So, Zuber said it in early 2020, the person that was in a city that had to be there paying $4,000 a month for a tiny little terrible apartment is now moving to the suburbs, renting a place for $2,000 or $3,000, $1,000 above the average, getting a better deal because they can work remotely. And that's continuing. There are companies saying, come back to the office. So who knows how that's going to go. But there was a lot of room for rents to go up because people don't have to work in an area to live in an area more now than at any point in the past.
I would use, so just to kind of circle back a little bit, instead of Rentometer, I generally look at Zillow rentals and to see what's actually for rent out there. And you can look and see how many days it's been on there and how many inquiries they've had. So that gives you a pretty decent gauge. I wish it would show what they actually rented for. I don't see that on Zillow, but they just still have, they have the rent estimate and they have what it was asked, what they asked for it. And you can kind of get an idea based off of that.
Right. I have the same problem of finding, when you rent out a unit, do you call an agency and say, hey, here's the amount that I ended up settling on? Like that data's just
Literally
not tracked.
never. Yeah.
But exactly like you did, I pull up apartments.com, Zillow, I go to Hemlane, because that's where I'm listing my properties now. Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, what rentals are there? How long have they been on the market? And it takes me about, I think, 2 weeks to get a good feel for because if it was on and it was off, that doesn't mean anything, because did it pop up again the next day at a lower amount or $300 more because they got so much interest, they realized they had misjudged what they could get. And it takes for me a couple of weeks to get a good feel for that. So anytime I have a tenant turnover coming up that I know, I will spend 2 weeks, kind of make a rent box that the lumberjack landlord talks about. And now I see that we have comments for the giveaway. And you do not have to tell the public world if you chose the hour or the audiobook. You could do that in the email. I put my email above these, and now I'm going to look and see about how many comments do we have here. It's about 20, so a 20-sided dice will work. Let me figure out if there's more than 20 though, really quick. Again, Beth, I want to say thank you. And if you could see, I got everybody here to say thank you too. So
thank you, everybody.
So this is going to be loud. I'm going to mute it. Hopefully I remember to unmute it. 11.
Who's the lucky winner?
See if I can count down in the order they showed up on mine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Kevin Couto. So Kevin, my email is just above these. Email me and let me know if you want an hour, which does not create a taxable event, because I have a video out that it costs $5,000 to pay for 1 hour of my time, because Beth, hopefully you understand I'm doing that so that nobody is stupid enough to pay that, because I don't want to create another job. But if somebody was that dumb, I will take $5,000.
You know what? It's worth at least that.
So what I'm giving away is a 59-minute Zoom call. It's not an hour, because that would be the equivalent of creating a $5,000 taxable event.
I can have that.
And if you don't want the hour, Kevin, you can choose any audiobook.
Oh, Kevin, you should take the hour. I hope you take the hour.
And then Lumberjack, thank you for that. Rentbox. Did you mention Rentbox? Rentbox, exactly. You nail it. Most of us have a buy box on what we would consider to buy. That buy box is easier to know if you know your rent box. So, Beth, thank you for taking the time on a random Tuesday that you weren't planning on.
Thank you. I'll have to do this again.
We will. You're always welcome anytime you want. You can pop in and text me and say, hey, I'm not going to jump in the live tonight. And we want, Mike might peer pressure you, but you have great information.
Thanks.
From an angle that we just don't have. You have the inspector knowledge, but you have that, like, there's a list of reasons I don't want to be an agent. One is the incredible lazy. 2 is I'm not looking to create another job. 3, people don't understand. A lot of times they say, I want to be an agent because I want to save on commissions. Well, let's talk. What did it take to get the license, maintain the license, pay for access to the MLS, be part of a brokerage, your brokerage fees, the taxes you're going to pay on that income. And if it's somebody that's becoming an agent just so that they can save on their own deals, would you actually want to work with an agent who's only ever had one customer? Right? Like the list is long. So yeah, I appreciate you coming on here because you have the information I just don't.
Well, I'm happy to chime in with any questions anybody ever has. And if people want to make comments with questions, I'll jump in as I can and just here to help.
And it's BethTraversogroup.com, correct?
That's my website if somebody wants to reach out to me there, or I'm all over social media too, easy to find and message. So
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all very much for coming to this. This Friday, there should be a live stream. I believe it's on the Lumberjacks channel. We alternate, so it'll be on one of them. I look forward to seeing you all there. And again, I'll wrap up even though he's gone. I really want to thank Millennial Mike for taking the time to come on here and do this. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk. And we are off of YouTube.